Good morning, everyone. Good morning to all of you who made the trek this morning after Thanksgiving, 9 a.m. Thank you so much for making it. And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of those that are joining us online. My name is Sweta Shah, and I'm a fellow at the Center for Universal Education at the Brookings Institution, where I lead research and policy work focused on young children from birth to 8 years old and their families, including those caught in crisis in the United States and around the world. I'm so pleased to have you at this event titled Young Children in Crisis, Listening and Supporting in Uncertain Times. This event will highlight some of the experiences of young children in crisis and discuss how shifts in foreign and domestic aid impact their futures and policy and financing solutions to ensure that no child is left behind. Often, in events such as these that are about children, children are not present. They're not in the room and their voices are not there. Of course, there are many reasons for that. Protecting children's identity is a main reason. But today, we're hoping to try to bring some of their voices here into the room. So today, firstly, I'm so pleased to share with you a new case study series that was published recently by the Brookings Institution called Unveiling Worlds, Centering Child Voices in Humanitarian Contexts. This case study series highlights 3 participatory arts-based approaches to uplifting children's voices in humanitarian contexts to inform early childhood programs and policies. 2 of the 3 case studies are being launched today, and you may have seen them for the in-person audience. They're out on the table outside of this room. And for those who are online, we have them available online on our website. So additionally, we're going to start our event. As I said, we need to have children's voices in the room. So we're going to start with a short video that highlights some of the lived experiences of Venezuelan migrant children in Colombia. So this video clip that you're going to see soon is part of a short film called Sueños en Ruta, or Dreams en Route, that was co-produced by a Colombian organization called La Otra Juventud and an American organization called Child Arise that I co-founded and of which I am on the board of directors. The film was supported by the Moving Minds Alliance and the International Rescue Committee in Colombia. Brookings would like to acknowledge the generous support of the LEGO Foundation to the Center for Universal Education. The foundation also supported the production of the video clip that you'll see today. As always, I'd like to reaffirm Brookings' independence and note that the views expressed are solely those of the speakers. So let's get started and first hear from the children.
Cuando uno iba caminando, pues los de edificios, casas, le gritaban a uno muchas cosas feas, de que por qué no se quedaban en su país en vez de estar acá. Yo le decía, mamá, ya vamos a llegar. Y me falta mucho. Natalia estaba cantando mucho. Yo le decía, mamá, ya vamos a llegar. Y al medio pasito, mamá, ya vamos a llegar. El viaje para acá fue duro porque mi mamá y mi papá, me ponían pasaportes y y siempre los terminaban como que no.
Prácticamente se sacó ilegal, porque ya solamente iba con el permiso que da la LONA, pues por la frontera, pero al llegar a territorio colombiano, pues obviamente ya ese documento no era válido.
En Venezuela no hay trabajo, la educación es muy poca, pues los colegios tienen 2 días o 3 días sin mucho a la semana estudiando.
Tenía 3 añitos cuando yo vine para acá, para Colombia. Mi familia es parte de mí y eso es un buen recuerdo que tengo de Venezuela, además que los tengo acá conmigo. En ese entonces yo no sabía quién era mi mamá y yo le decía a mi abuela mamá y a mi abuelo papá.
Nos tocó, como quien dice, con terceras personas, pasar a Leslie con otra persona, obviamente nosotros detrás de ella, para su papá de un lado, yo del otro lado, para que vigilar, como quien dice, la persona con la que ella iba, como para que tampoco se fuera a ir, no la fuera a llevar, pues obviamente. Y pues yo pasé delante, el señor con la señora pasó en el medio, Leslie arreguindadita de los dos de la mano y el papá atrás, que si cualquier cosa, pues ahí reaccionábamos al tiempo, no importa que con el miedo de que nos fueran a deportar.
Porque yo que me vine muy chiquita, me vine a los 3 años, dejar a mis abuelos, no me acuerdo, pero ahorita yo lo siento, nada más puedo llamarlos en videollamada, o sea, están muy lejos como para ir para la casa de ellos.
Recuerdo bañarme con el agua que cae desde el salto del ángel. Descalza subir por la montaña, una nueva ruta se abre adelante. Mis pies me piden una parada, a veces no comprendo este viaje. La trucha es un camino que calla el canto de todos los turpiales. Tambor de mi corazón, palpitan con el viento. Mi ruta y mi camino me trazan nuevos sueños.
So I hope you enjoyed that. That was a small snippet of the whole film, but at least it brings some of children's voices in here. And we're going to continue that theme. We're now going to have a fireside chat with 2 youth advocates who themselves were once children in crisis. The moderator of this fireside chat is Lucy Bassett. Lucy is a professor of practice at the University of Virginia's Batten School of Leadership and Public Policy, where she co-directs the Humanitarian Collaborative, an applied interdisciplinary research center that engages academics and practitioners around the world. She co-founded and co-directs the nonprofit Child Arise, which uses impact storytelling to create transformational change by and for children. Lucy has worked extensively with the World Bank, as well as UNICEF and other UN agencies and global development, applying her scholarly expertise and practical experience in child development, early childhood education, nutrition, and poverty alleviation. Lucy leads research and advises on projects in diverse contexts around the world. So I'd like to welcome Lucy Bassett to the stage.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for being here in person and online. I am delighted to speak to two youth representatives who will also share their stories briefly with you so that we can hear from people in other parts of the world and really ground this in lived experience and kind of the realities of children's experiences. So I will introduce our two speakers. First, we have Niall Deng, an award-winning systems innovator, storyteller, and community activist who mobilizes young people and designs innovative strategies that turn lived experience into scalable solutions. I think that's what we're all here to learn about and support. Growing up in Kakuma refugee camp, Kenya, Niall became a youth leader and community organizer at age 17 and built grassroots programs that have empowered over 25,000 young people through leadership trainings, education programs, sports and games activities, mentorship, and entrepreneurship workshops. He pursued his bachelor's degree in global studies at Huron University in Canada and advised multilateral institutions, governments, foundations, and international humanitarian organizations on issues ranging from peace and security, climate change, international development, gender equality, youth engagement, and humanitarian crisis. And his advocacy efforts bridge grassroots leadership and institutional decision-making through systems innovation and coalition building. And he's done public speaking in more than 50 countries. And in recognition of his community work and advocacy, he has received numerous accolades, including the Queen Elizabeth II Platinum Jubilee Award and the Global Student Prize, one of the world's most prestigious education awards. So we're honored to have Niall with us, as well as Atta Ullah, a 20-year-old Rohingya refugee youth advocate, writer, and community organizer based in Cox's Bazar refugee camp. He leads the Next Gen Rohingya Network to support education, digital literacy, and leadership for displaced youth, and currently facilitates learning and innovation programs with Bard College and BRAC University, helping refugee students build skills in ICT and project development. He's a global youth ambassador at Their World, who's especially interested in the intersection of gender and education with a focus on empowering refugee girls and advocating for equal access to learning and leadership opportunities. He recently featured in the Education Issue, Their World's newspaper, spotlighting the education challenges faced in communities around the world, in which he wrote about the state of education in Kutupalong, the largest refugee camp in the world. So I'm delighted to have these two young people, as well as some others who've just entered the room. And I wanted to start by asking Niall, who you see on the screen here, if you could tell us a little bit about your story of being a child in crisis in your youth.
Thank you so much for having me. Grateful to the team at the Center for Universal Education at Brookings Institution for having me. Very good to be back. I was hoping to be with you all in person, but I couldn't join in person. I'm currently tuning in from Nairobi, Kenya. But it's always good to be back at the institution. I was there in January early this year for the launch of the Africa Foresight Report. Was mentioned, my name is Niall Deng. I am originally from South Sudan. South Sudan is the world's youngest country located in the eastern part of Africa. I've never been to South Sudan. Sometimes I get asked about the country and I don't know much about it. I was born in Ethiopia. South Sudan has been, I've experienced one of the longest civil war in Africa, which displaced my dad during the early 1970s to move to Ethiopia, where I was born. And in Ethiopia, I had a beautiful childhood full of joy. I used to go to schools in the morning. I used to play with kids from the neighborhood in the afternoon. I would go to the river, would go to fetch wild fruits. We'll help with house chores in the evening. But one of the best part of my childhood was joining my dad in the evening to listen to the radio. My dad is one of those South African men that allowed the radio very close to their ear. He loved listening to world news. And that radio was the only radio in a small village in Western Ethiopia, in the Gambela region. So sometime men from the neighborhood would come and they discuss world news. They discuss what is happening back in South Sudan, asking questions like, when will we be able to go back, following the news there. But also that radio introduced me to the world outside my village. I learned about the stories of people and places far away from my village. And I think the radio also gave me my first dream. I remember in 2008 when President Obama was elected, I came back from school and my dad was like smiling and he's like, hey, I have to tell you something. We are a black man ruling the world. And I was a bit confused. I grew up in a Christian family. I was like, I thought Jesus ruled the world. It was like, no, we have Obama, the president of the US. And my dad, I sit down next to my dad and he was telling me about Obama and that he was originally from Kenya, which Kenya has played a key role in South Sudan. So the South Sudan comprehensive peace agreement that gave birth to my country was signed in Naivasha, Kenya. So many people always talk about Kenya, and also there's a very big group of South Sudanese refugees in Kakuma refugee camp and the Dadaab refugee camp in Kenya as well. So that was how my childhood was in Ethiopia. It was full of joy and storytelling. My dad is the biggest storyteller. And I never experienced conflict. So I used to hear about conflict from my dad until, when my village was attacked by a militia group. But also one key moment of my childhood was that when we used to listen to radio, I told my dad one day, how can I broadcast news on your radio? And my dad told me, you need to go to the school and good English and go to the UK and work for the BBC, which he used to listen to a lot. And that is all I wanted to do. My dream was like, one day I'll love to be on the radio so my dad can hear me telling the stories of my village, of my community, of my people. That was my dream as a child. That is all I wanted to do, to learn good English and go to the UK and work for the BBC and be on the radio so my dad could listen to me. Until one morning in 2010, everything changed. I was 11 years old. I was woken up by gunshot early in the morning, and my village in Ethiopia was being attacked by a militia group. I saw my village, which was my wall at that time, being burned down to the ground. And it took me time to process what was happening. And in my community, because of war and conflict, oftentimes when a village is being attacked, they send away women and children and men remain behind. So one of the most traumatizing part of that experience was that my dad told me I have to go and he has to remain behind. So my dad sent me away with a group of other people fleeing the violence to Kakuma refugee camp. I remember arriving in Kakuma refugee camp traumatized by the brutal images of violence I saw in my village. By not knowing when I'll ever have a chance to see my dad again, or my mom and my two younger siblings who were living in a different village in Ethiopia. And it felt like my world has come to a stop until I was able to go back to school again in Kakuma refugee camp after 4 months. Kakuma refugee camp is one of the largest camps in East Africa. It's also about 300,000 refugees from all across the African continent, I think from 15 different countries, mostly from South Sudan, Democratic Republic of Congo, and Somalia. And the school basically gave me a place where I could sit in a classroom. It gave me a sense of normalcy. It gave me a place where I could dream again. And I remember sitting in a classroom and saying to myself, oh, wow, I could actually achieve my dream again, and being on the radio. And I love stories. I'd go around the school, talk to kids from all across Africa who've experienced one near their stories. And that is how my community work started. One afternoon, I bring children together from my classroom to talk about our stories, our dream, our hope. We start having those sessions on a weekly basis. Then we start running game and sport activities, mentorship program. And then I reached out to the UN. I invited the UN Education Officer in Kakuma to come to one of our mentorship sessions. And it was like, we need this program in all the schools. And later expanded to all the schools in Kakuma refugee camp. And then I later expanded to the community. And I created social media account because I was like, I need to share these stories with the world. And, that is how my advocacy work started by being able to share those stories with the world, and people start inviting me to speak at conferences about Kakuma issues affecting refugees in the camp. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Niall, for sharing that experience and kind of connecting this to telling the stories. I'd like to now move to Atta to hear also briefly about your own story.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me all? Just to make it sure it's clear.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Good morning and good afternoon and good noon, everyone, wherever you are joining from. So this is me, Ataullah. Basically, I'm from Myanmar, Mondo Rakhine State, which is the northern side of Burma, which is the Rakhine State. So currently, I'm residing in the world's largest Rohingya refugee camp in Ukia, Cox's Bazar, Bangladesh. So I want to share my story that since I was born in Myanmar, Mondor Rakhine State, it has been so much, I can say, very uh, in a situation where the rights of the people we are living are not available for this, because the Myanmar government always trying to like their mission into ethnic cleansing the minority, excluding to us from the every layer of the nation, right to access to education and everything else. So since I was born, I was very unfortunate that I cannot go to a schools in the government school, which is supported by government in Myanmar, because they tried to give us the restriction. Even if you can go to the school, due to the restriction, you're not allowed like to take the subject, and you are even only studied given allowed to study only a grade standard 10. Then you cannot have a chance to go to college and also to somewhere else based on this. So this is what like the situation has been so much struggling on this kind of situation. It's not only for me and not only for those, but for all the ethnic minorities, especially who are living in the in Myanmar, especially in the Rakhine state. This is the thing, the place where it's mostly targeted. They called us that. Although I was born in Myanmar, my father and my granddad and everyone they were born in Myanmar. They have the nationality of this country, but finally they started from 1918. They started denying our citizenship. That they are calling us that Bengali, you're not from this land, and they're excluding us from everything from there. So since then, I don't know that's much a story, because I have two. I was around 12 to 13 years old while I was fleeing from Myanmar to Bangladesh due to the genocidal action, ethnic cleansing, all are doing by the Myanmar military and everyone. So genocide are happening. In order to save our lives, over 1 million Rohingya refugees, they have to flee from Myanmar to Bangladesh, and they are living here in the world largest Rohingya refugee camp in Rukia, Cox's Bazar, Bangladesh. So the journey from Myanmar to Bangladesh has been so much, I can say, hard, because we have to cross the mountain at night, and also some of them have to cross the river through the boats where there is no certainty and there is no guarantee of that boat will be drawn into the river. And the situation where we have to feel like very uncertain, like some of the women and so some of the pregnant women, they have to give birth their children into the mountain where there is no one to care on this. So this is the situation. Especially the kids, there are many kids like children under like like 5 years old, 6 years old, 7 years old. The parent meets them, and so they don't know where they're not getting their parent where they are right now currently. So the situation have been so much very challenging and also very traumatized, I can say, because people cannot survive this kind of situation here in the refugee camp. So after this journey, another challenges has started in the Rohingya refugee camp, because everything is not available for the kids, especially in the refugee camp. No matter however you go, for the first times while after arriving in Bangladesh, there is no such a kind of facilities are available to go to a school for the children to go, and also a learning space, and also open space for especially for the kids, because all are traumatized, and so nobody knows where to go, and the facilities for having are not also available for them. This is the uncertain of this thing. So for me, especially being experienced in genocides and also experiencing everything like displacement, everything that trauma, and also everything being doing this. So I started my journey. I started my learning journey from 2019. 2019, this is my starting journey of my education journey. I started like going to the private school where I can pay some of the money like to them, and also accessing some of the education on this. So this is the starting point in the refugee camp. There is the only thing in the refugee camp is need only quality education for them. So the lack of the quality education, people are going to like children are going to the doing child labor and also child marriage, everything's are happening. They don't know what's happening in the world, like in order to make like this children on this. So my journey being right now, I take it very seriously, my journey, like to go to a study and also to do something better for the community. Like keeping that mindset, I started my journey. Like I went to I got the chance to study at some of the private center and also here, and also completed matriculation in the learning center through myself and paying for my that my dad somehow can afford for this, and also giving on this everything on this kind of thing. And after this, I started my I got a chance to apply for. Yes.
I just wanted
Yes.
to have you maybe get close to wrapping up and maybe end
Okay.
with some
Okay.
sort of hope or dream.
Yeah,
for the
thank you.
future.
So yes, so for this kind of thing, I started my fellowship journey, and that's everything else what I'm doing now. Currently, now I started my next gen Rohingya network. That's what I'm doing, try to advocate for the rights of the Rohingya community in the world. So thank you. I will share. That's all I think. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so Atta, while I have you, maybe just, I want to keep us on time, but if you could, in maybe about a minute, give us just a little snapshot of what is a hope or dream for you for your own future.
For me, I would say that like the dream and the future I'm seeing, it's not certain for me because being as a refugee, like I don't know what is going to happen tomorrow. But the thing I believe myself, being as a I am dreaming it of doing it, like to be a diplomat, like to represent my community into the international level, so that they can see the harsh reality, what is happening here, like what they can do for the betterment of Earth, and to show, like, as far as I can see, that the attention of the international community are becoming less from us, because it has been 8 years we are living being as a refugee. So that I want to make sure that every child, no matter their status, where they are, they should have an access to quality education and access in everything what they deserve. And I want to represent their feelings, and the thing I face personally, being as a displaced person, and also face different kind of challenges being as a accessing quality education in the camp. So this is what I don't want to see so much kids, so much children that they would like to face like me. So I want to have such kind of access to them by doing anything, by doing advocacy through writing, through videography, whatever this I can. I want to see like they can access everything. For example, the thing would be the priority will be given like digital literacy. As we know that at the age of science and technology, our community people are very, I can say, so far away, I mean, behind this kind of layer, like in the field of artificial intelligence. So if they can use in our classroom, if this kind of digital skill are integrated, then they can also they can also adjust this current world. So this I want to see that they can also do this kind of thing for the betterment of the community and also for themselves. As far as I know, for me, I learned everything from my by using digital literacy, because there is no accessible thing that I can do for this. So I believe this also will be a chance for them to display and also to grow themselves, being as a to learner, like as they don't have access to learning materials, and also being as a refugee, they are not getting quality access to education. So this is what I need to ensure that they can do this type of thing. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Atta. And Neil, turning back to you, could you share with us your own vision for the future, your hopes and dreams?
Yes, sure. Thank you. I feel like my dreams have changed so many times. But you know, that BBC story I shared about on the radio, in 2020, I remember I was working on a project during COVID-19. And BBC reached out to me to ask about that project and my story and how COVID is affecting people in Kakuma refugee camp. And my dad was able to listen to that interview, and he was very happy and excited. So I think I am, I'm no longer wanting to be a journalist or a broadcaster, which my dad is a bit sad about. As you mentioned earlier, when I moved to Canada, it was actually after that interview that I said to myself, I actually now need to go and get a college degree. I started applying to schools. I applied to both the US and Canada, and I was able to get into a number of top schools in the US, including Columbia and Cornell and Berkeley. All my American friends were mad. They're like, you don't say no to Ivy League school. But I did end up going to Canada because as a refugee, I wanted to go to a place where I could find a home and settle down after my school. So in Canada, about opportunities to work very closely with Canadian Foreign Aid Service, which is Global Affairs Canada. I've been advising the Minister of International Development on development issues. So I think I would love to start working around multilateralism. I think, one thing I'm very keen about is how we can use, emerging tools like AI to help democratize access to opportunities and education for young people, especially elevating the quality of education. I think education changed my life. Education is a very powerful tool that can help young people to become leaders, to build their own future. And I remember one moment that stood out to me was going back to Kakuma refugee camp in 2023. And I was training young people on digital literacy. And I asked them a simple question, and almost everyone was ChatGPT. And I was like, wow, this is impressive. So it sort of made learning, unimaginable. Growing up in Kakuma refugee camp, for example, we didn't even have enough book in our library. And I think, new emerging tool like AI can help, change that. So I'm really looking forward to sort of exploring how to build, AI tool that can help democratize access to education for young people. I think that is what I think I'll work on. But I'm also still going to get involved in multilateralism because I'm very passionate about how we can help make sure we stop conflict in the first place so children don't have to be in the situation they find themselves in.
Thank you so much, Niall and Atta. It's great to hear these perspectives, and I know you'll make great contributions to how we solve these problems going forward.
So thanks so much, everyone. Thanks to Lucy and to Niall and to Atta for really bringing out, sharing your experiences, your hopes and dreams. And I think that's really important to start with the human story. That's why we're here. We're here for young people in crisis. But now we're going to turn our attention a little bit to what can we do about it. So it's great to talk about these stories, but we need to think about how we can make an impact in the world. And so this portion is going to be a panel discussion where we really think about what are we seeing, from the policy and program perspective, from the financing perspective. We've seen recently shifts in foreign and domestic aid. What does that mean for young children in crisis? And so we're going to have a conversation about that. So along with Niall and Atta, who are still here, I'm so pleased to also welcome Katie Murphy and Kat Kirk. Katie is the interim director of the Moving Minds Alliance, a global multi-stakeholder alliance advocating for better outcomes and equity for young children affected by crisis everywhere. She's also the global practice lead and director of research for early childhood development at the International Rescue Committee and has over 20 years of experience working in the field of early childhood development, education, and sustainable development. She served as the technical lead for the design of the Ahlan Simpson, which received the inaugural 100 and Change Award from the MacArthur Foundation. Those of you in this field know about that project, one of the largest investments for early childhood development in emergencies ever. And Katie has a PhD in interdisciplinary studies in human development and an MPH from the University of Pennsylvania, an EDM from Harvard Graduate School of Education, and a bachelor's from Johns Hopkins University. So welcome, Katie.
Thank you.
And then I'm going to move to Catherine Kirk, who likes to go by Kat. So Kat Kirk is currently a senior fellow with the Georgetown University Collaborative on Global Children's Issues, where she contributes to the collaborative's efforts around centering children in adversity in a changing landscape of foreign assistance and funding. Her areas of expertise include early childhood development, parenting programming, maternal newborn child health, early identification, and interventions for children with disabilities and health systems. So welcome, Kat. Okay, so we're gonna start this conversation, and I'm gonna ask all the panelists this first question, and then we'll move to the second one. So let's kind of set the scene a little bit. We heard children's voices, young people's voices, but what are you all seeing happening that is jeopardizing support for children in crisis? Maybe not from a child perspective, but from your perspectives of working in this area. So let me start with you, Katie. What are you seeing that's happening?
Well, first, thank you so much, and thank you for the incredible voices that we heard today. The children from Venezuela, Nial, Ata. I mean, this is really what grounds us in this work, right? And I think across all of those stories, there's a resounding call for ensuring that children not only survive, but are able to thrive. They're able to have these wonderful dreams, to flourish. And that is really what ignites our work at the Moving Mind Alliance. We are a global multi-stakeholder alliance with a presence in over 120 countries. And we are really united in this mission to lift up the voices from these various different contexts and ensure that we are supporting with the enabling environment they need to have sustainable solutions to ensure all children thrive. And one really interesting initiative that we've taken on this year builds from work that we started in 2018 and 2020, which was in order to understand how we can advocate very smartly for young children in crisis, is to understand the financing landscape. Where does the financing come from, and how is it directed towards these crisis and conflict affected settings? We did the refreshed version of this that we just did in 2025 that came out in October, was able to use large language models and natural language processing, so a much more robust methodology than what we'd used in the past. As many of you may know, in order to ensure all children thrive, it requires health, safety, nutrition, economic supports, mental health, responsive caregiving, opportunities for early learning. So trying to find that in the budgets of various different funding flows can be pretty tricky. And there's often not a clear tag that says early childhood development. So using these very robust methodologies enabled us to do this in a way that we hadn't before. So I'll cut to the chase in terms of the findings. I don't have slides, but if you can remember 3 numbers. The first is that from 2018 to 2024, all of funding for early childhood development in crisis conflict, in crisis context, and that includes development funding flows and humanitarian funding flows, was less than 4%, 3.8%. The second, which is a really interesting statistic, is of course the majority of that, less than 4%, is allocated to critical supports for early childhood nutrition, for health initiatives, but what does that leave for early learning and responsive caregiving? And when I say responsive caregiving, I also mean mental health of caregivers who have experienced crisis and trauma. Less than 0.5% of all funding goes to those critical categories of early learning and responsive caregiving. So if we're serious about trying to make these dreams a reality, if we're serious about trying to build a more sustainable, prosperous future, and not have repetition of these types of crises, we need to think clearly about how we're investing in crisis contexts. And so that figure, I think, for me, really tells an important story. And the third is we did also an analysis, and this, I should say, was with our partners and consultants, Causal Design, who did an excellent job, but they also looked at the projected funding cuts in this area, using the OECD projection of a 30% decline in funding. And that equates to over $1.8 billion lost in just the next couple of years for early childhood development in crisis and conflict. So of course, this awakens us to a need, a huge gap, but also presents an opportunity for how we can think differently about innovative finance and other ways that we can support those systems.
Great, thank you so much. Wow, less than 0.5%. Wow. So Kat, let's turn to you. You're at Georgetown and you've also been doing some work in this area. So tell us what you're seeing.
Yeah, so before I joined Georgetown, I was with USAID. And I think, as Katie has said, we know there was so much we needed to do before. We weren't doing what we needed to do to invest in young children, but we had a strategy and we had a path that we were working towards to make progress on this. We had amazing new findings out of the All Hands Simpson project that gave us for the first time really robust evidence on what works, what we can do in humanitarian settings to support parents, to support early learning. And so I feel like we entered 2025 with a lot of opportunities. And where I sat within USAID, it was called the Children in Adversity Team, which was set up over a decade ago, formally kind of established initially within the health as part of US law, to coordinate across the whole of the United States government working on international issues around children. And it started out of a lot of emergency and crises, starting way back before with the HIV crisis and huge orphan crises, the Haiti earthquake, when the US government needed to better coordinate in order to respond effectively to children in crisis. And we were on this path. We launched a new strategy in 2024 that focused on how do we support early childhood development, how do we strengthen child protection systems and ensure children everywhere grow up in supportive, loving families, whatever that may look like in any given context. And what we've seen over the course of this year is just a complete decimation of that infrastructure, at least for the US government side, which, as you've talked about in the work that Moving Minds Alliance has done, everybody is grappling with what does this mean for the numbers, because we don't really know. We've got projections of this or that, but it changes day by day with the state of the government. But we know we didn't have enough funding for young children to begin with, and the cuts have hit hardest on the most essential supports within foreign assistance, on the core basics where we were doing more on maternal and child health, on nutrition, on education. And we heard Niall, we heard Atta talk about how important health and education is, and all of these pieces are a fragment of what they were. And on top of that, we've lost all the expertise within different agencies across at least the US government that was working to try and do better, that understood the science behind early childhood development and what we needed to do, and trying to coordinate across actors to do better, because we needed to do way better to begin with, and we've gone major steps backwards. What I'm doing now with the Georgetown Collaborative on Global Children's Issues, when all of this was unfolding in early 2025, the collaborative came together. It's a space for dialogue across sectors, thinking about how do we do a better job of supporting children within that university structure. And so we came together to think about how do we capture what is happening, the stories. Niall talked about how important storytelling is and understanding our history, documenting these efforts that were underway to try and do better by young children through foreign assistance. And so we're in the process of, we've been doing consultations with local civil society organizations all over the world, primarily in development settings, given accessibility to those actors, but trying to hear, what are you seeing, what do you need, what are you doing, how are you problem solving? Because the reality is, with foreign assistance, the US government stepped away, they pulled out the resources, the communities are still there, they're still working, they're trying to support their communities and the people around them. They don't walk away in the way that foreign assistance and foreign government did. So hearing from those perspectives, and really, really importantly, hearing from persons with lived experience, hearing from youth advocates, hearing from children who've experienced care systems, hearing from persons with disabilities, caregivers of children with disabilities, my specific passion area, to hear, what are you seeing? And we've heard, I think this crisis hits the most vulnerable the worst. Children living in crisis experiences, children with disabilities. Those who are already struggling the most have had the most to lose, and they lost the most, because those essential services, economic assistance, these different structures that were there, where the US government made promises that there was going to be support, there was going to be funding flowing to do these things, and organizations and partner governments stepped up to to make commitments that they'd be able to follow through based on these promises that were made. And you've got these community organizations, primarily on the front lines, being the face of this change, dealing with this uncertainty. And, you know, I think I'll pause soon, but the reality is just there's been so much chaos that wasn't necessary. There was enough chaos in the world that we were all trying to navigate and deal with and support people through. But this was intentional chaos to interrupt work in progress, to abruptly cancel funding, to, you know, it just has added, it's made 2025 so much more complicated, and thinking about where we go from here really, really hard, because there aren't enough resources at the moment to do all the things we need to do. And so it's a time to really think about how we come together. I think I love that Nehal and Atta both spoke about wanting to be diplomats, multilateralism. We need to come together more than ever to find a way forward, because no one has the perfect answer that's going to get us through such difficult circumstances. So we're going to have to find those solutions.
Thanks. Yeah, so, you know, we heard from Katie and Kat just about at the global level, what are all these changes, these dips in financing, and I'd love to hear now from Nehal a little bit about what you're seeing from where you sit. You know, you sit at a global level also now in Canada or Kenya, you know, wherever you are, but you're also connected with, you know, colleagues and friends who are in countries. So what are you seeing, Nehal?
Thank you, Sweta. I hope you can hear me. You know, I think Kat and Katie paint a great picture of what is happening, and very good, you know, to share the platform with you both. Katie, I've had a chance to collaborate with the Moving Mind Alliance during the UN Transforming Education Summit. So good, you know, to be on the same stage together. I think for me, you know, just to talk a bit about, you know, what I saw growing up in Kakuma refugee camp and what I've experienced, you know, traveling. I've done some traveling across Africa in 2023, visiting refugee camp with UNHCR. I think one of the first things that always we miss sometimes is that refugee camp are designed as temporary hubs. You know, that is the structure in place. And I think that is always what happened during crisis. We set up these places as places where people come for a very short time. But that is not the case for children. You know, this camp lasts for many, many years. You know, I live in Kakuma refugee camp for 11 years. All my friends still live in Kakuma refugee camp. So what that means is that, you know, schools, playground, child-friendly spaces are limited from the start. So from the time we design responses to humanitarian situations, these critical, you know, infrastructure for young people are limited from the start. And I think for children in crisis, and you know, this is what I've also had talking with young people in Kakuma refugee camp around the world, you know, that are currently, you know, experiencing the brutal, you know, crisis we're in, is that, you know, the most important thing during a crisis, you know, is normalcy, you know, going to school, you know, playing games, joining sports, you know, these small things give safety, you know, they give learning, they give hope. And I think even before, you know, today funding crisis, you know, I can't remember, for example, living in Kakuma refugee camp a single year where things improved. You know, there's always funding cuts. You know, we will always have, you know, one or this project being cut at the school. There's always reduction to our food ration. And this has been going on for years. And as I think, you know, as Kate mentioned, you know, less than 5% of global development aid, you know, go to education, you know, something that is very critical for children to not just survive, but thrive. So I think, you know, what we're seeing today, I think it's more than a funding problem, honestly. I think we're seeing the entire humanitarian system, you know, being bound down, which is sad for children, because it's oftentimes the only survival that they are, but also the only tool as well for them to thrive. But also I think what we're seeing as well is that, you know, the humanitarian system for a very long time has been, you know, overstretched. You know, it's been becoming more bureaucratic. You know, and I think now with what is happening is that, you know, we're seeing less focus on children learning and play. We see, you know, it's oftentimes with very limited resources, organizations are focusing on survival. So that's food, that's shelter, that's healthcare, which is important. But I think also making sure children thrive, you know, is also very important. And I think, you know, in short, I feel like what's happening and what is jeopardizing support for children is that, we see camps that are designed as temporary hub but last for a very long time. So I think we need to go back to the core of what is really happening and what is wrong, because, as I mentioned, all my friends live in Kakuma refugee camp. I visited refugee camp across Africa where I talked to families that have lived there for more than 30 years. So I think we need to go back really to talking about what is driving people out of the home and how can we stop that in the first place. It's difficult, but I think we need to start having those difficult conversations because I don't think aid is the solution at the end of the day. I think the second thing that is jeopardizing support for children is the chronic underfunding that I mentioned earlier that Kaylin can talk about. That didn't start last year or this year. It's been going on for a very long time, and this affect oftentimes mean there's less money and less resources going to education and child development, which is very critical. And I think the other challenge as well is bureaucracy, which I mentioned. And that means basically there's more focus on survival of a long-term growth and hope, which I think is very important for children. It was key for me growing up in Kakuma refugee camp to be able to have a sense of hope. That is the only thing that can be going in the refugee camp. And I think for children, I feel like that is now being, robbed away from them. I always tell people that when you flee a conflict, it oftentimes robs you away from your childhood. And I think what we're seeing now with this crisis is that the future of children is also being robbed away from them. And I think it just fits into how this is a very critical issue that we need to,
Good. Okay, great. Anything else?
No, that's it from me.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. Okay, so wonderful. So, I think this is really interesting hearing that, refugee camps, people don't always realize that refugee camps do last more than a decade or more, oftentimes. So when you're thinking about support, it can't be a 1-year grant or a 2-year grant. And just, you mentioned kind of that the funding cuts are not new. There have been issues around funding for as long as those of us working in this field can remember, and that perhaps there needs to be a different way to rethink the whole humanitarian architecture, and perhaps to have a focus on prevention. So super interesting. Atta, can I call you in, and what are you seeing from your perspective in Cox's Bazar?
Thank you very much for this question. So from my context, being from the refugee camps, I can see that we are witnessing several worrying trends that are directly jeopardizing for children in crisis, especially from us. So the first thing is that, as it is always common, that humanitarian funded cuts are having the most severe impact on early childhood development support, because in the refugee camps, among 50% of the 50% of the population are youths, like kids, like under 18 and under 20. So while the funding cards and the first service they are trying to survive are often disappear, and also a learning center, and also psychological supports, and also child-friendly spaces and others programs. So young children, they rely on those type of fundings and stimulation and social development. Then everything are closed down while the fundings are cut down. So this is the situation, I believe, in the crisis that directly jeopardize. Prolonged displacement is creating like a cycle of development risks for the kids into our community, into the refugee camp, because most of the Rohingya children in the camp have never lived or set into the humanitarian crisis. So they grow up in the limited access to formal education, accessing and also early learning materials, and also play-based learning environment, and also that's the thing. And also, the most importantly, as we all know, the research so that children who lose early learning material like ECD, early childhood development support, as opportunity in crisis native and also emotional impact into them. So yet those fundamentals remain unfounded on this. So this is also one of the themes due to the prolonged displacement directly jeopardizing into children in crisis. The third thing is that digital explosion widen the gaps, because while the wall is shifting repeatedly and also dramatically changing it. So digital based education and services are not available on this. So the crisis they need is on this service then. So the refugee servants also they deserve such kind of services, such kind of tools into this. So like due to the limited access to education and so poor electricity for me, like this is what I manage, like the lights around me and also the thing is everything is just very difficult. The internet access is also not available, as you know. So this is how we manage. So this is also directly impact into the lives of the children into the refugee camps. So on this, then the fourth thing is that as crisis within the family members, as we know, for the development of the kids, for the development of the children, family is the most responsible for it, because the one like in the refugee camp, as we know that the kids and the children they go to the learning center, the play-based learning center. They only live there, they only stay there for 1 hour, 2 hours. They come back. Well, they came back, the environment became different. What they will do now? This is the situation became so much harder. So while the family are stressed with the like ration cards and everything else, they are not having the funding and the situation on this. So the family has started like giving started like leading them to the child labor and doing this work. And imagine 5 years or 7 years children, they are working that they're going to sell some of the ice cream bar and ice cream balls and some of the things in order to earn money, because he's also thinking of the family. Imagine like 7 years. I have seen, this is the real experience what I'm seeing currently in my community and even my blogs. That's they are doing the child labor on this side. So this is what directly jeopardizing, this is what directly impacting to the children in crisis into our community. This is what I believe. And this fifthly is the like global attention, I can say. As I said earlier, the global attention is moving from us, because as we know that the quantity, the population of the refugees are increasing day by day in the world, in the whole world. So it is not the thing that they cannot cover on everything. So we are living here around approximately like 8 years plus right now. So the facilities where we used to get to them are now less down, like not getting so much help thing. So this type of thing are directly jeopardizing on this. So due to this problem, like as we know, the children in crisis, they are having like malnutrition program. They're not having like access to those kind of thing, like they cannot stay healthy by eating what they're getting, and so nutrition on this type of things. So this is what the access to this kind of facilities, nutrition facilities in the camp is very limited, like very limited. For example, in my camps, there are around in camp 1 there are around living 400,000 families. So I can say they're not among them there are only 2-3 facilities, nutrition facility centers are there. So they're not covering them, and so most of them are not going there, and they don't some of them are excluded, even they don't know where the facility is provided and this kind of thing. So due to malnutrition, we can see a large number of people are going behind on this. And the lastly, I would say that the thing is like all with this combined, the thing that can be brain like to make a better community in ours is somehow I can say in our community they have like a kind of conservative mindset on this kind of thing, like something they don't believe on something else, because our community are living in a different era, like people they don't believe in something else. So this is all something they can the children are being exploited. Like they think that like education is not people are becoming like this, like they don't consider like education is the only solution for the displacement and the crisis. So they believe something like this kind of thing. So I believe all this kind of thing that what I mentioned are directly jeopardizing and also impacting to the children in crisis, especially from the refugee context on this. So another thing is that lastly, it is in our community regarding the learning facilities. Learning facilities also are not available. There's some learning facilities, but among them, as I said, 50% of the population are children and so young schoolish young people. So they're not getting a school to study. And recently, this year, May, the for about 1 month, all the learning facilities, even supported by them, everything has been stopped and in the refugee camp due to fund cuts by UNICEF and this kind of thing. So this is what directly represents this from the refugee context. Especially, it can be a very different type of thing on this kind of thing. So thank you very much. This is what I'm saying.
Yeah, thank you, Atta. I mean, for highlighting a few things, which is that around 50% or so of people in refugee contexts are young, whether they're children or they're youth, and that's really important for us to remember because often we think that there's so many services that are provided that target adults, without remembering that this is actually a really large group. And I think you and Neal and Kat and Katie all mentioned that there's often a focus on the immediate survival, shelter, health, water, nutrition, food. Those are great, important, but so are the other aspects, which are learning opportunities, mental health support, opportunities to be protected and to build connections. Those are the things that often fall through the cracks. So now I want to ask all of you to think about, in times of uncertainty, there can often be a silver lining. So while it may feel for those of us working in this field that this is not a great time because of all these shifts that are happening globally with regards to funding. Atta mentioned that education, UNICEF stopped, they don't have funding, so education stopped, So it may seem like there's all this negativity, but also it can be an opportunity to reimagine what happens moving forward. And I think, Neal, you mentioned a little bit about rethinking the humanitarian architecture. So I want to know from all of you, what do you think that reimagination could look like? What are the key things that we need to think about as we move forward to support young children in crisis? We can't necessarily support how much money or how much support. We'll try, but we can't control that. So what could we do to reimagine this? And let me start with Kat, because you at Georgetown have done some research. You've been engaging stakeholders to learn a little bit about kind of this way forward, this reimagination. So let's start with you, Kat.
Thanks. I mentioned that through Georgetown, we've been doing some consultations with civil society organizations all over the world, with people with lived experience. And across the board, a lot of what we've been hearing isn't, we have to go do this huge new thing. It's that we have to do the things we've said we were going to do for so long. We have to ensure the funding reaches the local actors who do the work, and not just reaches them, but that they're making the decisions, informing how the funding gets used. We are hearing from Neal and Atta, seeing exactly what's happening in these refugee camps that are home to many generations of children and families for a very long time. They need to be in the decision-making seat and guiding how resources are being used. In order to do so well, resources need to be given with flexibility to be able to adapt to the needs of different organizations. So a lot of what we're hearing are it's not new messages, but I think because there has been such a massive disruption to the architecture and the bureaucracy that was, we must use this moment to do better. But we also must continue to work together collaboratively and multilaterally. It doesn't mean a future of very different aid is a future of isolationism. We must learn together. Children everywhere need to have opportunities to learn with new technologies and the latest things that are happening, so that opportunity is spread. I think the other piece that we heard so loudly and clearly in this moment, I think there's some there are some exciting things that are happening more on the development side with the G20. Commitments to early childhood development have been made. I think these are really important. Financing from governments is going to be essential for services in the long run for young children everywhere. But we need to also learn from where we've come and build upon that. So one of the things that we've been trying to do as Georgetown as well is document some of the history of what did we learn within the US government of trying to coordinate across multiple government agencies to provide services for children and young children, because I think we don't want to repeat mistakes of the past. We want to go forward, and so we need to be able to lean on that and learn from that. And I think the last piece, I think, is so important that we don't forget. I think as we focus more on government financing and some of these pieces, that sometimes civil society can get lost in that narrative. But civil society is what speaks for the people. It's what helps to hold governments accountable. And I think it's so important that we continue to lean into that, into listening in partnership with civil society, persons with lived experience. I think I've always focused on the youngest children, and so often the voice for those children is those families and those parents, and we have to be listening and creating space for that in the future. And it will only be brighter if we find ways to work together and to collaborate across organizations and entities, the UN, civil society, governments, because we have to band together to support and scale the systems that children and families need to make that bright future for their children, to give them the basic needs, to provide the care and the love that every child deserves.
Great, thanks. So I'm going to turn to Atta, because Atta, Kat, you mentioned that, children and people who are in situations of crisis need to be part of the decision making. And that's what our case studies are also about, trying to find documenting ways to do that. But Atta, you're already doing that. You see a gap in education in the camps, and you're already doing that. So can you tell us briefly a little bit about your nonprofit initiative that you started that's refugee-led?
Yeah, thank you very much. So for me, the nonprofit that I started is only because of the problem I can see. While I started while I started thinking beyond the border, to thinking about my community, what the solution can be done. It just started in 2023. I started my nonprofit, which is called Next Gen Rohingya Network, Next Generation Rohingya Network. So through this, I'm trying to bring those changes. For example, the digital literacy skills, leaderships, and digital literacy leaderships, and also educational resources, especially the things I have used for myself, to improve myself. So there are lots of youth who badly needs those kind of opportunities. Through this, I conduct weekly workshops, the online resources, for example, with the free of cost and everything else, and the leadership skill. And also I invite some of the speakers, those who are in my connection, and the person who are really wanted to who have experience on leadership, and that they can conduct a workshop. They can conduct a workshop on this, giving them a space on this, bringing them, and also letting them know that how the world, and also how can they can see this kind of thing, understand the real situation of them. Into them, and also bringing them I'm trying to they can do everything on this part of thing. So this is the reason I started this is because as I am a student at Bard College, I'm doing my online degree, is on the political science, on the subject, majoring on this. So from there is a civic engagement center at the Bard College. So from there, I approached them, and also they also connected me on this and supported on this. So they last year there was a conference, Get Engaged conference from them. So from there, I also showcased my projects and what I'm doing, and so what the resources I'm doing on this. So they also impressed with the with the topics and also with the the contents I'm doing. So there's a global engagement fellows from the parts. So from them also some of the speaker I always invite to them monthly voices. They came and so give the resources, like to give the leadership skills and also the project how to develop on this, and also how to make how to learn something through digitally, like using mobile phone, not to use in not misusing on this, and also how to use this on the right way. So as the internet is not accessible for many of the youth in several places in the refugee camp, so we do I'm using a technique for them. Like I bring them in a center, like it's nearby my home, and also especially sometimes I use my home like a shelter where I bring them and together make them in person, and also join like use some of the digital from the laptop or sometimes projector for this, and so learn together with this, so that they can access on this kind of thing on this. So the only thing is that I know that I cannot change the entire system on this. I need the support. I mean, I cannot make like a huge impact on this. So the thing I started is like changing by them. So as a success story, I can say that there are several students from those who used to attend, and so the session that I conduct due to digital literacy, most of them are now accessing some of the like courses, online courses, and also some of them are accessing online degree even from abroad, like who are studying the like digital like online basis. For example, from University of some of the studying University of the People, which is online based, as far as we know. So they are studying there, and so some are studying in some of the courses for Coursera, Khan Academy, and also we give the resources and they guiding them how to access on them. So this is the thing that I believe they can do. Myself, what I use my technique, then guiding to them so that they can go on this trajectory, as the gaps and also the formal education is not accessible in Bangladesh, especially for with the restriction for them. So I believe this will be the thing they can make, and I started this initiative to take care of this. So my ambition is also more with this initiative to make it bigger, even bigger, so that we can access everything around the camp. We are now operating. I'm now operating with this network, with this nonprofit around 10 to around 15 camps right now. So there are total 33 camps in the refugee camp. So I'm trying to expand them, and so that I can reach many people and so many youths in the refugee camp. So that's all for these like supports and needs. I invite most of the voluntarily those who are my friends especially and my colleagues, and so someone who are really interested in doing such kind of work like me. So we are doing such all of this unpaid, and so we're not gonna pay going to pay for something else, like sometimes from the Bar College, as I said, I have received a grant like which is around $1,000. So for this I did a lot of things providing the resources and also giving access to this, and also I also run a pilot project on the digital literacy for especially inviting, and then those project led by me, and also conducted workshop by many friends on this. So this is what I did. I have also many plans to do. Like if the times allow, I will do this. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Let's go into that in Q&A because I want to give a chance for Katie and Neil to also answer this question. So thanks, like awesome. Like you started this phenomenal initiative. You started it in the camps, $1,000, very easy to do. So let's turn to Katie now. What do you think we really need to do? What are the things we need to keep in mind to really shift this?
Yeah. Well, I can give an example from Nigeria, where I'm
Right.
just returning from, which was so inspirational. I mean, Nigeria, a country that has so many strengths, but has the largest population of out-of-school children, is facing extreme conflict and unrest, particularly in the north. We brought together stakeholders from refugee populations, from internally displaced, from federal government, from local government, NGOs, CSOs, all together, youth advocates, to really think through how we could think differently about the system of support for early childhood in crisis and conflict. Nigeria used to be one of the top recipients for international aid for early childhood. Number 2 in development, number 5 in humanitarian. So what that means is that they're facing $89 million of funding cuts just in the next few years. So this really motivated action among the stakeholders who were there to think differently about how they could mobilize domestic financing, look at innovative financing. We had impact investors there from local foundations who are all very much interested in coming together and thinking through not just the policies and finances that we need, but the accountability systems. And that is really driven from the kind of grassroots mobilization, understanding of the needs of young children in crisis and conflict and how they can ensure that they're advocating for transparent and high quality systems to support that. So that was really exciting. But to underscore Kat's point, the answer isn't just every country needs to do it alone. We need to lock arms across experiences, across nations, to be able to share what works, what doesn't work, to share resources and learnings in a more powerful way. And so that's what we're aiming to do. And just lastly, from the Ahlan Simpson Project, we know that there are solutions that work. We have cost-effective interventions for early childhood and crisis. And Ahlan Simpson is not alone. There's other projects that have also great innovations. Multi-year funding initiatives that really support embedding that within systems so that those systems last beyond the duration of the project and are able to support the communities long term. So that's really critical. And I think we have it. We just need to keep the momentum around that.
Great. I mean, I love the hopeful note of momentum. So Neil, let me turn to you because you,
sorry, I just meant to, I wanted to say another area where we're linking to the global initiative is the Act for the Early Years campaign. And Kat mentioned the G20, which was really exciting. And that was a critical piece of our Nigeria convening where they actually localized the manifesto and made commitments around how the different actors would ensure that they're committing themselves to early childhood. And we are expecting Nigeria to make a bold commitment in the 2027 first ever Global Financing Summit for Early Years that is expected to mobilize at least $1 billion. So we're excited to be part of that.
Right. Yeah. So the Act for Early Years, for those of you that don't know, is a global initiative that includes a number of partners, including all of us here. I'm not sure if Georgetown is officially at it, but MMA is, Brookings is, and it's an effort really to move along financing and to get some more governments to step up. So Neil, I want to turn to you to close us out before we go to Q&A. You know, from where you're sitting, what do you think needs to change? You mentioned the humanitarian architecture that needs to be kind of reimagined. So tell us what you think, and maybe make your comments brief so we can have some questions from the audience.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I think, you know, my co-panelists already shared great insights. I'll try to be brief. I think one of the first things is that I feel like there's a lot of talking in humanitarian aid system, too much talking. We've been talking about localization for a very, very long time, but localization, other localization agendas not really materialized in, you know, development aid. And I think for those of us that travel and go around the world and see development project at the local level, we see that, you know, there's not really a good integration of local leadership and local voices and local solution. And I think that is the first thing we need to change when we're thinking about, you know, how do we do humanitarian aid and development differently? So I think we need to start seeing communities as co-creators, real co-creators, not just beneficiaries. We need to start seeing local organizations, teachers and parents as people who are expert, who understand you know, the need of their children, you know, in way that I think large international agencies often miss. You know, we need to look at ways that communities can design their own child production, child programming in schools, and that means, you know, giving them the opportunities to be able to lead, giving them the opportunities to be able, you know, to design projects from the start. I feel like, you know, localization, you know, today and engagement of children and youth have been reduced into, you know, just consultation. I think we really need to change that. It doesn't have to just be consultation. We need to start seeing them as leaders, as co-creators from the time we start thinking about brainstorming ideas to prototyping to development and actually to monitoring and evaluation and seeing what works and what doesn't work. I think the second thing is we really need to, you know, explore new ways of doing development. You know, an experience that was really interesting for me this summer is that I went to China for a summer leadership program at Tsinghua University, summer leadership course looking at development and governance and poverty reduction. And I think it was quite interesting for me, especially, being from the African continent, where I feel like, many different model of development of fame. We've been talking about poverty reduction for a very long time. So I think oftentimes this is still very much focused on trying to import, Western model of doing development. I think we need to start seeing, let's say, Africa and the global South as very different contexts. So sometimes we cannot just, try to import ideas into communities. We need to start seeing communities very differently. That means there are development projects, for example, that might work very well in Nigeria, that might work very well in Cameroon, but they might not work well in South Sudan. So we need to start seeing things differently. I think the last part, or maybe just two more points. I think, one is we need to start looking at an innovative way of financing. And I think, my co-panelists mentioned that I think the development and the entire development agenda has been much focused on government funding. I think we need to start doing a lot of rallying. We need to start bringing private sectors on board. We need to start bringing businesses on board. And even exploring local financing as well. I always tell people, I feel like one thing that the current foreign aid cut has made in many African countries, from what I've seen on the ground, is that people and government are talking about, actually our entire aid or our entire healthcare system was funded by foreign aid. What can we do nationally, locally to try to find, funding from the ground? So I think we need to explore all sort of, innovative ways to get money. And I think, we need to start seeing how technology can help us to make, aid delivery, service delivery more efficient and less bureaucratic and more fast as well, because I think that is very, very important when a crisis aid that we need to get moving very quickly. I think those are just some ideas to help us think about the next step.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So no easy solutions here. Let's open it up for some questions. We're running a little past time, but we also started a little bit late. So any questions from the audience, please just raise your hand and we'll have mics come. There's one here.
Hello, good morning. I am Dr. Lainez. I work at DCPS. I have a group of students with me right now. They are pursuing being exposed to the credentials for Child Development Associate, but the reason I brought them here because I want them to be exposed to a more broad perspective of what child development encompasses. It's not just the classroom. So, and that being said, I have lots of questions. One of them will be, for the sake of time, I will not ask all of them.
Have a reception, so you can also mingle and chat
absolutely.
with us then.
And I can leave my phone number or my email or my LinkedIn, and you can contact me there. Yeah. Where the funding come for these programs? Is mainly USA fueling the money, or is any other country involved in these global initiatives? That's one of my questions. What is the source of that money? If it comes from the government, is just taxpayers or contributions from private organizations? And my other question here is, what is being done at the local level? Do we have children in crisis in Washington, D.C. or in the DMV? Are we focusing in here? Are you aware of the childcare gap? Are we being affected? Because that also, I was reading about the buffet of early childhood from the University of Nebraska, that with that childcare gap is an impact, financial impact of over $2 billion in the economy. So I just want to find out. And the last question is, what opportunities can be for young, my students, to be involved in initiatives like this to prevent children in crisis in Washington, D.C.?
Great. Any other questions before? We have some online, but maybe I'll just answer those given we're short on time. And then you guys add on. So I think to answer your question about where does all this funding come, majority of the funding has been coming from government sources, so foreign aid. buckets. So that's why Kat mentioned U.S. government, because there was a lot of money coming from U.S. government for these programs, but also from Canadian government, from British government, from Swedish government, German government, all over. And I think, what we're starting to see is that as that foreign aid budget across the globe decreases, we need to figure out other ways of financing. And so you mentioned, like, what are local efforts? So there are a number of local efforts that are happening. Sometimes they're at the city level. So I'll just share an example of the city of Addis Ababa that we have a partnership with, where, the mayor has actually decided that young children in families, all children, whether they're in crisis or not, should be supported. And she herself has, worked across the various sectors in the city of Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, to really get funding from local levels, from local existing budgets. And this would be taxpayer money, for instance, that's, shared. So that's, I think I answered those two questions.
The local level, I meant right here.
Yeah. So DMV area, absolutely. And when we say children in crisis, we don't just mean in South Sudan or in Bangladesh. We also mean here, because there are a lot of kids here who are in crisis. Crisis is not necessarily refugee. Crisis, includes poverty. It includes child separation. It includes, here in this country, the threat of being deported for some children, being separated from their families. So there are a lot of crises here as well. And there's a lot actually that your students can do. And I would love to have a longer conversation with you guys, particularly about what you might be able to do here in DC. Does anyone want to add to that?
I'm so glad you all are here. That's really wonderful. And
Yeah.
we need the energy of the youth to address these very difficult problems here at home and elsewhere in the globe. And I think to our point too is that we don't want our solutions to be, of course, we have to look in our own backyards and really focus on what we know best, but also kind of share experiences across contexts, because that's where there's a real richness of learning that can occur, and that's needed.
And I think I would just add the hits that are being felt to young children globally, what we've been talking about today. That same thing is happening here in the United States. Children don't have a political voice in the way that adults do. We can help support a bigger political voice of children. And I think the biggest thing for students to think about is, how do you engage in your community? What are the opportunities for you to speak up for what you believe in, to learn about what's going on and how you can support, whether it's through local organizations or raising your voice and taking that political voice back, because so often it's easy to take things away from children, because particularly the youngest children can't fight back for that. But we're seeing big hits to our early childhood education programs for the most vulnerable children in the United States, so right here in the DMV and elsewhere. And you see places where local governments are taking claims. I think for those following the domestic things, the state of New Mexico is instituting the first universal child care program in a state. We've got lots to learn about what they're doing. And so I just, I think encourage people to use your opportunities at play. So great to have DC Public School students in this room. Your opportunities for education, leverage that, and leverage your voice.
So before we close, let's take one question from online audience. So Izzy, is there one that you want to uplift? And then we'll close.
Absolutely. I have a couple here, and you can feel free to take your pick. So Julia Smith from the National Zoo and Conservation Biology Institute asks, what kind of educational supports have been the most impactful for displaced children? And then also, Bayazid Khan from the Directorate of Primary Education asks, in crisis, young children need social and emotional learning and adaptation learning. How can these be provided to them besides just listening and supporting?
Yeah, so why don't we take the socio-emotional question, because I think we've highlighted that a little bit, but it's so critical. Would any of the panelists like to answer that one, of how, Katie, do you want to take a stab at that?
Sure. Understanding the experience of crisis and the local context are really critical to providing responsive support to any of the children and families that are in these conditions. And so building up those social emotional skills with very culturally appropriate and adapted responses is critical to any response. One, to kind of pair it with the other question, one really promising intervention where we've shown impact and cost effectiveness has been using caregivers themselves as the teachers within their own home. And so providing them with very clear, simple guidance and instructions on how they can support holistic learning, both early literacy, early numeracy, but also critical social emotional learning and motor skills. And that has really proven to be effective, even in as little as 11 weeks, with outcomes similar to a full year of in-person preschool. And so those types of approaches, using those in the community, using the caregivers who know and have that kind of cultural resources that they can draw from in that response is really critical.
Yeah, so thank you. I would love to continue this conversation, but we're at time. So just in brief, I want to summarize some of the key points that came up. So we saw that all children, no matter where they're born, no matter where they live, have hopes and dreams and also have risk of crisis, whether it's a refugee kind of situation, conflict, climate, economic situation, political situation, or it could be poverty or divorce. You know, there's so many risks that children face, but they all have hopes and dreams. And it's really critical that if we want to move forward as a community, we need to, as adults, start listening to them in an authentic way, not just in a tokenistic way. So there's been a lot of discussion from the humanitarian architecture, this grand bargain, which says that we need to listen to children, yet it's not really happening in practice. A lot of talk, as Neil said, about localization, but how much funding actually goes to initiatives like what Atta is mentioning that he started that costs $1,000. Can you imagine? You know, and then we heard from Kat and Katie also about flexible financing, that if we want to see children in the driver's seat, families in the driver's seat, we need to think about shifting power, really shifting power to them, giving them flexible funding, and that sometimes could mean that a donor needs to take a risk. They need to take a risk that maybe, you know, the funding that they give may not be used exactly as they want it to be used, right? But they need to take that risk for that. We also talked a little bit about innovative financing, that looking beyond depending on government financing, looking at private sector, looking at city level funding, looking at even like middle class in countries that could send remittances, for example. So I think, you know, we have no clear solution. This is a step. This is, you know, it's a process. But I think these kinds of conversations, I hope, will get you thinking about what can the solutions be. And I hope that after this, you keep thinking about, you know, what can we do for young children in crisis? What needs to change in order to ensure that whether it's a child in South Sudan or in Kakuma or in Cox's Bazar or in Washington, D.C., can get the support that they need. So thanks so much for joining today. We have a reception outside. Please go mingle and, you know, network, meet each other. We also have our reports out there. We also have Atta wrote an article that's also out there if you'd like to check that out. So thanks so much for coming this morning.